And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Sunday morning's flying weather. A lot of IFR here into the interior, especially the central and western part of the state, with the zone extending eastward there toward the border. Arctic coast looks to be mostly VFR for the morning hours Sunday. Otherwise, a lot of marginal VFR here with some IFR across southern Alaska. VFR, though, for the eastern Copper River Basin extending right down the southeast coast. And IFR for the eastern Aleutians, south side of the Alaska Peninsula. And then for Sunday afternoon, batch of IFR here as that system pulls northward here will be spreading in toward Togiak Bay and into the southwest mountainous areas there, Kilbrook, Auckland Mountains, extending back down to the eastern Aleutians, another band here along the south side of the Alaska Peninsula, up in toward the east side of Kodiak Island, and splits off here with one band across the eastern Kenai Peninsula into Prince William Sound, and another band here along the Alaska Range. Not too bad in the Kuskokwim Valley, some VFR, and also not too bad up in the interior here with marginal VFR over the Yukon Flats, VFR for the North Slope and Arctic Coast, and mostly VFR for the Copper River Basin. Got some IFR here over the northern Panhandle westward to Yakutat, with some areas of marginal VFR for the central and southern southeast coast. And then for Monday morning, IFR here, eastern Bering Sea, right up to the coastline there, Nunivak Island, back down toward the Pribilofs, or covering the Pribilofs. But to the south, better conditions, marginal VFR from Atka eastward to the Alaska Peninsula, VFR west of Adak, and still IFR here along the Alaska Range and the North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound, down toward Kodiak Island, marginal VFR for the Gulf of Alaska. And more in the way of IFR now for the northern Panhandle with marginal VFR to the south. Then for the afternoon, band of IFR forms here along the eastern Alaska Range, northern Bering Sea, IFR right into the southwest coast. And IFR holding here along the Alaska Range with another band, another surge of moisture here, actually a low taking more of a track to the east there, keeping IFR on the east side of Kodiak Island, and also along the North Gulf Coast, southern Kenai Peninsula. Marginal VFR, mostly marginal, for the southeast coast, as well as the Aleutians and southern Bering Sea. And looking at the passes tomorrow, Anaktuvik, IFR to start, marginal VFR to finish. And that same trend also for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, look for IFR conditions, lowest on the eastern approaches of both passes. Same thing for Rainy. And windy also, IFR. With Isabel, a little better at marginal VFR, and then as you head east, conditions improve there with Mentasta Pass looking mostly VFR tomorrow. And for Tanita, back to marginal VFR, and Portage, definitely IFR here for, there we go, especially with the lowest conditions, eastern entrance, and Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels here, about 2,000 to 4,000 feet from the Gulf and across Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, down over the eastern Aleutian areas there. And from there, going to the icing graphic, a lot of moisture coming up in southerly flow here ahead of that low center that's back to the west here, coming up toward the eastern Aleutian. So considerable moderate rime icing, pretty good possibility here. Alaska Peninsula, Pribilof Islands, down toward the Kulski area there. And chance of considerable moderate rime icing here covering much of southern Alaska, as far east as Cape Yakataga, St. Elias area, into the Gulf of Alaska. To the north, icing free. To the east, southeast coast, staying icing free. Jet stream here, we've got south to north flow with this low coming northward toward the eastern Aleutians. So up to 95 knots out of the south there, coming across the Aleutian Range, Alaska Peninsula. Up to the north here, we've got westerly, 75 to 100 knots across the northern interior, but much lighter for the Arctic coast, northwest 65 for the Panhandle, and main jet max south of the western Aleutians. And at 9,000 feet, here's that strong low coming slowly northward. Good south winds here, right up to 65 knots. In toward the south and southwest Alaska area, Alaska Peninsula, in toward south central and Cook Inlet, but lighter to the east and northeast. And the southeast coast, not too bad. Taking a look at 3,000 feet, we'll see Again, the low center about in the same place, but very strong winds, 75 knots there out of the southeast in toward Bristol Bay, and about 35 knots into Prince William Sound. Up to the north along the Arctic coast and portions of the North Slope, we got east to southeast winds 35 to 50 knots and light over the Panhandle. Turbulence-wise, with those winds, maybe some moderate turbulence there along the western Brooks Range. Otherwise, a widespread area of considerable moderate turbulence here for much of southern Alaska, Kodiak Island, eastward here into the central Copper River Basin, extending back along the Aleutians all the way to Atka Island.